Hey Jaden, I wanted to leave you some feedback on Essay 1, Your Personal Narrative. So I think that there's a lot of interesting information in this essay. Um, and I think talking about Alaska as a place is indeed fascinating. Um, I do think that there's quite a bit of the essay that drifts away from a personal narrative. Meaning that a personal narrative is supposed to tell your own story. And so the reader gets the sense that you're going to tell the story about how you moved from, well, we don't know because you never tell us directly, to Alaska. And what really ends up happening is you spend a lot of time talking about the history of the state, which is interesting. But like I said before, this really isn't an informative essay. This should be a discussion about your own story. And so at the end of your essay, you bring up a lot of really interesting personal points here. You make great friends, you learn to fish, you learn to snowboard, you learn to ice skate, you have all these memories. So these really are the ideas that the reader expects to come up in a personal narrative, but these are the ideas that you don't explore, right? And so I would recommend as you go back through and look at this a second time, uh, more clearly, I suppose, connect each of these places to your I don't know, personal reaction. So, in some ways, it's hard for me to say what you're doing with this because your thesis statement is really too broad to really know what your point is, right? So, you say, this is my story of the places I've visited within the state of Alaska and the lessons I have learned living in its state lines. So that's a little too broad for us to really understand what you're doing in this essay. So, really, with personal narrative, as we discussed in class, what you want to do is have a clear arc, meaning that some sort of change should happen to the reader along the way. And I don't see a clear arc in this essay yet. What I do see is like a collection of memories, but primarily a discussion of, some of the more interesting aspects or tourist destinations or activities that go on in Alaska, which, like I said, is interesting information, but it kind of drifts away from the purpose of personal narrative. So here's what I would recommend. I would recommend going back and thinking about, okay, what is one story about Alaska, my experience in Alaska that I could tell? So you say here the lessons. What is one lesson that you learned during your time in Alaska? And then what you want to do is think about plotting that story out on the story arc, like what we talked about in class. So what is the exposition? Who are you when you first moved to Alaska? What is the rising action? Then what is the turning point? What is your moment of change? And then where are you now? Or what did you get as a result? I think that will bring more focus to this essay. Because, like I said before, there's a lot of interesting information in here, but it kind of drifts from the purpose of a personal narrative. And it also, like I said before, there's not a clear story arc that the reader suggests. But I do think that there's enough information here that with another round of revision, I think you can get there. Also, make sure that you give this a round of revision for commas and run-on sentences, and comma splices. So if you have questions about that, please reach out and let me know. All right, thanks.